All right,
Consent to be videoed.
go ahead and get started today. I'm gonna tell you that, somebody messed up the video earlier, so.
I don't know who did
So
that.
this is my second time in the video, because I really like it. So we're having this meeting today, Dr. Mayo asked me to speak to each group, because we had really high failure rates among kids in special populations. So special ed, 504, ESL. The percentage of failures that came from those populations was extremely high. So that's why we get to meet. We get to talk about accommodations and modifications and everything I've heard 100 million times. So we're gonna do it a little differently today. The way we're gonna talk about it, when you came in the room, by choosing your seat, you chose your team. That is your team, this is your team. Y'all are on a team together. We're going to have a little debate. The way the debate's gonna work is that I'm gonna give you 4 minutes to visit with your team. You're gonna talk about your talking points, and then we're gonna come back. Each team will have 2 minutes to state their position. After you've stated your position, then we'll go back and we'll huddle up again for about 4 minutes, and then we'll come back and each team will have 2 minutes to rebut what the other side said. Standard debate, right? So this side over here is going to argue that every kid has to do the same thing in order to get credit for my class. Every kid has to do everything. Maybe don't, but you gotta argue it. You gotta think, so it'll be easy. If you don't agree, then it should be easy to think what they're gonna say. So this side is going to say that every kid should get what they need, whether that's a modification or accommodation, in order to be successful. So those are your two sides. Everybody's gotta do the same thing to get credit. Everybody's gotta get what they need to be successful. So think about your talking points. You have 4 minutes to talk with your group. You'll also need to decide who's gonna be the speaker when we come back. Go, your 4 minutes starts now. There we go. All right, so let's all come back together. And what's gonna happen is that we're gonna give each side 2 minutes. This side will go first. You ready? So when this group presents, they're gonna present their opening statement. When y'all present yours, it's an opening statement. It's not a rebuttal. This is the opening statement. So this side is gonna go first, and they're going to explain to us in 2 minutes about why every kid should have the same standard in class.
So the reason we believe that every student should have the same standard in classes, regardless of accommodations or modifications, at the end of the year where we face TIA, where we face where a student is placed, we are looking at how they compare to the standards set by the state. When we were looking at curriculum-based assessments, so CBAs, MOIs, stuff like that, it's all the same standard regardless. We are not able to go in and modify when it comes to the STAR test. I might be able to orally accommodate, however, the standard is set regardless. Do they know 6.8B? If they do not know 6.8B, doesn't matter the subpop that they are in, they are held to that standard regardless. So it should not change whether or not they are in my class, out of my class, or testing. The standard is set, therefore the standard should be held across all boards. When they come into the workforce, when they get out of everything, they should be held to the same standard regardless of classification. If not, we are setting our students up for the same standard, we're just currently expecting them to fail. So the standard should be set across the board so that there is no question about what they are expected to learn. So that when we align cross-curricular, you go from chemistry to IPC to chemistry, you know where they lie. You know where they are. We are able to put you in proper classification, bio and AP, all that fun stuff, because they were held to the same standard. Without a standard, we are just dust in the wind, trying to count specks on a windshield.
Now we're good. Opening statement over here, why we should accommodate, modify, do whatever the kid needs to be successful.
I have to say, you brought it. That's a hard act to follow. So our main argument was that we can expect mastery to be looking very similar in terms of the critiques that we're actually looking at the kids that master. But we've got so many absences, we've got kids that are differently able, that we need to be flexible in the way we are presenting the material and the way that we're expecting the kids to show their mastery of that material when they are speaking with us. And in order to accommodate absences, for example, you have to be flexible in the time, the pace, and the place. I've got kids who are blind and deaf and colorblind, and expecting them to work the exact same assignment the exact same way is ridiculously unfair to those kids. When we go to lab, it's the exact same deal. You can't give them the exact same material and expect the exact same thing out of it. If a kid's been absent for 3 weeks, the lab you're doing that day may not work for them, may not be of any use, and maybe a complete waste of their time. So we can maintain that the standards have to be the same, but how we're getting there, where we're starting and where the kids ultimately present that knowledge doesn't necessarily have to be the same. It is patently unfair to be expecting them to do all the same thing from every single kid when you've got 150 kids for all different.
Anybody else want to add? You've got about 40 seconds left. All right, we're good with that? Okay, you have 4 minutes to go back and huddle with your group to think about how you're going to respond to what the other side says. So think about their points and what you're going to respond. Your 4 minutes starts now.
Between how much time you have.
All right, guys. Come on back together, and we will hear the rebuttal. All right. So this time, this side of the room is going to go first, and they're going to rebut what you said. So your 2 minutes, same speaker. All right. Your 2 minutes starts now.
All right, I took notes this time. All right, so we actually talked about the idea that in the workforce, we have people doing different jobs playing to their strengths. You've got people at HEB who are bagging groceries. You've got people who are acting as their managers. You've got produce managers. You've got grocery. You've got stocking. You've got everything. But since we have different people in different jobs in the workforce, it's unreasonable to expect everybody to be able to do everybody else's job the exact same way. And on top of that, it's important for people here, our students here and now, to see that there are accommodations and ways that they can approach this differently. So in the sense of when we offer accommodations on our end, we want the kids to realize that it is okay to ask if, for example, something is not working for them. They can ask for an accommodation so that they can still achieve that goal. But ultimately what it came down to is the kids are starting at different levels, and as a result, we can't hold them all to the exact same standard of mastery at the end. A kid who starts at a 0 and gets to a 70 is doing substantially more heavy lifting than a kid who goes from, say, a 50 to a 70. And the other end of it on ours was more or less, what do we do with all the kids who don't master? If you approach them all the same way, what do you do with those kids who don't make it at the end? Do you just reteach them the exact same way the second time and hope it works better?
All right. Great argument. Okay, this side, you're going to have 2 minutes again. Speaking again, Brian? All right, your 2 minutes begins now.
So going back to your point, you said that we must remain flexible in how we teach. We have to remain flexible. We still must remain firm. We are still talking about a standard that's going to be held across all so that we can hold people accountable. In our system, currently, we have a GPA-based system, which means a GPA does not necessarily reflect mastery. Everything is held across the sub-pop. If a sub-pop that's being accommodated makes a 70 on a test, but something that's being held to the general population makes it 50, they're going to say that, well, the 70 was better than the 50. But we're not going to say that we also eliminated half the choices and I read it to them so that when they apply for our colleges, one GPA may be skewed due to the flexibility that you are allowing, not the firmness that is required. The different jobs will all still have the same standard. They're not going to be done in the same way. However, things will be done to the same thing. I don't really care how you cross the finish line, but the finish line will be the same for everybody. Just because you are slower does not mean you get a 10-meter head start. So when we are talking about our flexibility, that was it. When we are talking about the flexibility, if our GPA is the standard, then our GPA can still show growth. And to your point, it says if they don't meet the standard, then do you just reteach? Correct. It doesn't mean that we don't reflect and we don't continue to change what we are teaching, but we do have to hold them to the standard of, hey, they don't know how to run opposite arm, opposite leg. I still have to teach them to run opposite arm, opposite leg. Otherwise, we are setting them up for a world where they cannot compete and they cannot achieve because they do the proper steps.
Woo! Woo! Who wants to debate you? You want to debate?
Yes.
I would argue that some people argue the 10-meter head start in life because of what I have learned, not only in my educational master's class, is that our school reflects the society that these kids live in. And so because it reflects that, we know that some people are getting that head start. And so since some people are starting out the gate faster than others, then I think we do need to accommodate those that are not starting out as fast so that they can hopefully catch up with those others at the gate and, or excuse me, at the finish line, so that, you know, they can be able to get the same equity in education than those that are starting off 10 meters faster.
It is
so many times that's done by dragging the others back instead of.
But isn't that funny, like to have to argue a side that sometimes.
Well, my example for there was more.
Well, the test is the race. Okay, the test is the race. The kid with the accommodation, I'm not talking, I know all the learning gaps that start with the okay. I'm just talking in the sheer sense of modifying the side. The grade's 100. The ones with the accommodations are starting off at a higher, closer to the goal line, you know, closer to the finish line. Tying into his point with, you know, a kid that has to take the test with all the answer choices, no oral accommodations, no graphic organizers, anything, makes a 50, yet the kid that gets all those makes an 80.
So it's kind of like this side is arguing you must be equal to be fair, and this side is saying that fair is not always equal.
So
That's where it started.
And,
That was the whole crux of the very first argument.
Instead of saying that somebody's getting like a 10-meter head start in the race, what if they're starting 10 meters behind the starting line? You're really bringing them up to the starting line so that they can run the race.
But don't you love this? Like, you've heard these arguments before, right? Yeah. And we all know what our legal, y'all didn't even throw it out there, like, the history people are like, it's a law.
Didn't say anything
My
about
God, we're
Well, I was gonna come back to it.
But then their rebuttal was, but not all laws.
You're right, but if we use your sports analogy, you get a paraplegic, you're gonna tell them to get out of the wheelchair, drag themselves to that finish line, and then when they don't make it there quickly enough, you're gonna complain.
So we can also flip it and look at it, whereas I'm not going to race a paraplegic against Usain Bolt. The standard is the same, and that they all must do the same thing in our class is what we said that our side was. And so when we're looking at it, you said maybe they're starting 10 meters behind. I'm gonna say looking at it as 10 meters behind, I'm gonna say all my kids are at the same starting point, so they're all in the starting line. But for you specifically, I'm gonna scoot up your finish line by just a little bit because you only have to make this to achieve mastery that you are capable of. By holding them all to the same standard, I think maybe they can surprise us at the same time. And saying like, well, I'm gonna eliminate half your answers and you're gonna make a 70, that's awesome. But what if I give them all the answers back and they somehow make a better grade? Well, then does that show better growth? Does it show that they don't need that? Because we take away accommodations all the time because they grow out of it. The only way they're able to grow out of it is if they're in a system that doesn't truthfully give them the accommodations all the time so that they can figure out, hey, I don't need these trainings. I can do this on my own. I don't need the snorkel. I've learned to breathe underwater, you know?
And I think we can keep arguing this back and forth all day long. There are valid points on both sides. Nobody's arguing that.
I'm sorry. You have to evolve to be able to breathe underwater.
It doesn't mean you can't try.
The point of this activity, number one, is to be thoughtful, because this is all information. This is all things and we've all had these discussions before. But it's also a format that I was thinking, like, how can you use this in science? But environmental to me is the easiest. We can debate an environmental issue, like, you know, what pros and cons, assign aside, have them think through that process. But this format, even though you were not all the speaker, I watched, you were all participating. And even if you weren't verbally contributing, you were listening to the vocabulary. And the vocabulary was centered around special education and IEPs and modifications and accommodations. We're using the language. So think about your ESL kids in your class and building their language and having them work and hear that think through, not from the teacher's point. You'll know the content. You got it. You can think through, you can talk through that like that because you understand it. But having a peer talk through that process. So this was just a format in which you might kind of use this in your classroom. If you have a co-teacher, this is great where you can put an adult in each group to help keep those groups on pace. You can make smaller groups. I still remember my 9th grade year here. Mr. Horner was my history teacher, and we had to do a debate in his class over the cause of the Civil War. And we had groups of 3 to 4. We had to research, and we had to make. I still remember what my topic was that I had to defend, and I said, and you had to be ready to defend either side of it. So I said, it's just a great activity to use in classrooms. So wanted to share that with you as we got started, to get us thinking. I've got some bullet points that Dr. Mayo wanted me to be sure and touch on, so I want to be sure and go through all of those with y'all. The first one was talking about knowing your kids and knowing what they need. Hopefully by this point in the year, we know our kids and we know what they need. It makes me really uncomfortable if I sit in a meeting and they say, they were supposed to have that test read to them all year long, right? So know your kids, know what they need. If they don't need it, I didn't say if they don't want it, I said if they don't need it, tell us and we can take it off. Those are not forever lists. If there's something not on the list that they need, tell us and let us add it. So those lists should be ever changing.
What if they're refusing to
I'm gonna get there.
use?
So I get it. I'm not going to start a fight. I'm going to try to use my relationship. I'm going to try to encourage. I'm going to try to persuade them to utilize that, because not every kid that has oral admin has it because they can't read. I got a whole bunch of ADHD kids who get an oral admin because they can't stay on track, because they can't stay on pace. There are other reasons that we use that accommodation. I get there's a kid who's going to say, I'm not going, you can't make me. I'm not fighting that battle. I'm going over to your paper and I'm writing, offer to read the test to him, please initial right here if you don't want it, and then you stay and you do it. The problem becomes in when she's still failing. She won't come with me to get the oral admin and she's still failing. So that probably is where we then go to a meeting to discuss that. But there's more than, can you be pulled out in small groups to have it read? Yes. Can you put your earbuds in and have it read? Yes. And I'm sure they all follow along great when they have their earbuds in. That's exactly what they're listening to. But there's just other ways you can do it. So if they're a total refusal route, I wrote it on the top, have them initial, keep a copy of it for me, or I come to the meeting and say, I agree, the kid needs it. Here's my documentation. They wouldn't do it. So I know that too, that biology teachers, sorry, because I've seen what middle school does to you. You get like the 2 pages worth of accommodations that you have to do everything. I remind middle schools, I'm reminding you, we all have to come to work every day, but we don't all have to arrive in a Mercedes. Some of us drive up in a Chevy or in a Ford. We have to get to work. Accommodations are the same way. We're not giving you everything that would be nice for you to have. We're giving you what you have to be successful. If I don't get to work, I'm not going to get a paycheck. If they're not able to be successful, that's what the accommodations are. It's to help you be successful. It's not to help you make an A. And I know for some of our parents that's hard too. So just remember that. If you need to change accommodations, if you have more than you need, if you have less than you need, and it's a 504 student, who do you talk to about changing it? Ginger Cawthorn. Her office is right in this hallway next to us, right by the bathroom and the mail room. So if you need her, 504. Who do you talk to if you have an ESL kid? Miss O. Who do you talk to if you have a sped kid? You. See, your friends always say that. All day long. You can't talk to me. I'm happy to help you. Who else can you talk to? Case manager. If you know their case manager, that should be your first line of defense. Case manager should be the one. If you don't know, which I understand sometimes happens, hopefully case managers reached out to you at the beginning of the year and kind of let you know who was their list. If you don't, that's okay. I can tell you, Hannah, my secretary, who's probably the easiest to get, you can shoot her an email or call her and say, who's Johnny's case manager? She has the listing and tell you. Any of the assessment staff can tell you. We're also happy to help you just say, Ferguson, this kid has this accommodation. They're being very successful in my class. They don't need it. Can you please help me get that off? And I will give it to the right person. We'll get it together.
Assuming this is the session we're recording, right? For those that
Yes.
I'm gonna add this to get so that it's on the recording. There's one group of people that has not been mentioned yet.
GT.
Give to
Students that would receive an accommodation.
We mentioned 504, we mentioned PB, we mentioned.
How do kids get to those levels?
RTI.
RTI. You can serve students with accommodations under RTI, and that is provided documentation that can then warrant students to be able to get to a 504 or be the indicator that student is in need of testing for SPED. We are underutilizing RTI accommodations for students in the classrooms. You don't need a formal piece of paper to start that process for a kid. I just wanted to add that because I know it was being recorded, and I know the other sessions didn't get it because I wasn't in here. But we'll make sure that that's clear. As the RTI coordinator for Temple High School, we are underutilizing that resource for our kids. I just want to add that.
Initiate.
You see a need, you start applying that accommodation for a child. You document it, whether it's being used or what it's not. For students to be able to receive an accommodation on STAR, for example, it has to be a proven, successful accommodation, and you have to have time to do that. So I don't want to add more. You can send me questions later, but for the sake of the video, I wanted to just add that 2 cents in.
And I think that they probably do it anyway because good teachers do what kids need because the kids need them. And so that's just the documentation piece that if there was, because as y'all know, we've had more referrals come for 504 and Sped Pd than I've ever. When I first came to Central High School, if we got 10 a year, I think we had 10 by October, November this year. Like, it's a lot more referrals coming through for kids. So, thank you for making that point. All right, let's talk failures. Can a student in a special population fail your class? Yes. In order for that student to fail your class, what has to happen? Right? No documentation means what? That means they pass. That means no failing grade. That's the one time that admin can override your grades. Is that I have a kid who has modified curriculum, and I say, come show me how you modified their curriculum. It's the only time. So make sure that just if a student is going to fail, when the kid has 27 absences and we've been in school 30 days, like I get an attendance report as my documentation, right? The kid's not there. You can't modify nothing. I understand that. If you have a modified kid that's not being successful in your class, my question would probably lean about, do we need to look at how that student is being modified? Is it enough? Do we need to add additional modifications? Do we need to look at additional supports? For English and math, that might look like resources. There's not that for science and social studies. So we probably would need to look at a modified kid a little more closely than we would an accommodated student. Only special ed kids can be modified. You cannot change teach requirements for any other student other than a special education student. So keep that in mind when you're doing it. If you need help on how to modify, come let us know and we will be happy to help work through that. Want to add?
No, I had a question, but then I remembered that I already.
That's even better. All right.
To in-service that just looks at this particular topic. And what I mean by that is I think it would be nice for the teachers to have either a day, half a day, or whatever, to look at the students, to actually look at all of that documentation that we have come in and to see exactly what they need and maybe just to create something for themselves so that they can see, hey, these students need this. And because I'm sorry, I come from period, it's just not.
You're the third teacher today that's mentioned that. So I think that that's a valid thing that several people, they're saying, if I had time before school to go through my students and to organize what that looks like for that child, that would be really beneficial. So yes, I have heard that. So yes.
Perhaps we could
Yes. I said that's another, we've been doing that at middle school this last couple of weeks, and it's been hard because like we should have done this at the beginning of the year, but y'all know what back to school's like. And so yes. Talk to me about the difference between accommodating and modified. What is modified? Change and teach standards, right? Only special ed students. What's accommodations? I would say accommodations the how. How do we do it? Like you still gotta do it, but how we do it, you wanna do it orally, you wanna do it. I had the deaf folks in here earlier, they signed it, like we still have to do it all, but how we do it is gonna have some flexibility in it. You've had the kids who bomb the test and then you call them up to your desk and you ask them and they know the answers. Did they master the content? Okay, things to keep in mind. We talked a little bit about failure meetings, and the last thing is more of a Ferguson thing than a Mayo thing. I want to talk to you a little bit about those input forms that y'all send back from meetings. Super valuable piece. In fact, as a parent, I think that's the piece that they value the most is what you have to say about how the student does in your classroom. But I want to tell you, please keep in mind that what you write on that document becomes part of a legally binding document that we keep for 7 years. TEA loves to audit our special ed department, so they come through our paperwork frequently, and your paperwork is in there. Also know that the mama sees what you wrote. So one comment I'm going to read to you, this is a lovely person who meant lovely things by it, but the comment reads, student honestly does what normal students do. What does that mean? Like, what's normal, right? And how do you feel as a mama when they're talking about your kids? Or the daddies? Like, how does that feel? So we know what she meant. Like, the kids doing what they're supposed to. They're doing what everybody else does. They're fine. That's what was meant by it. That's just what it was written. Another comment, this comment said that student needs no additional modifications. Which, okay, but the problem is the kid doesn't have any modifications. We got a list of accommodations. So as a parent, I'm thinking, does that teacher really even know my kid? Like, they don't need any additional modifications? Interchangeably, yes. So I said, that's the point. Those are not interchangeable terms. They don't mean the same thing. And in my world, they're very different on them. So things to keep in mind as we move forward. So far, questions, comments, concerns?
I just have
Okay, perfect. Sue and I are gonna hand you out a piece of paper. And if y'all just pass them down, everybody needs one. Absolutely. Please send an email. We've got a few extra. Okay, so what we're gonna do next is everybody's gonna get their piece of paper, and I'm going to ask you for 1 minute, one only, I'm gonna time it. We're gonna write. Sorry, nobody loves writing. No, I'm fine, you love writing. So the one thing I want you to write on your paper first is going to be, what is the most important concept that we reviewed today? 1 minute to write, bullet points, sentences, whatever you like, go. What is the most important concept that we reviewed today? All right, there's your time. Stop writing. Even if you're in the middle, that's okay. You can just stop right there. Hey, think about your exit ticket for your classroom when you want to know who got it and who didn't. And everybody write for 1 minute. Y'all did, you did. Even if it's bullet points, because some of your kids who aren't good writers are not going to write you a paragraph. But in 1 minute, they can make you 2 bullets, even if they're just a couple of words. So a way to get kids to start writing, easy activity. So the next thing you're gonna do on this paper, we're gonna do one more 1 minute activity, or one more question for you to answer. When you finish and the timer goes off, stay in your chairs till the timer goes off. When the timer goes off, you are finished, you can hand me your paper as you walk out the door. So our last one that we're gonna start is, what is the biggest barrier to providing accommodations in your classroom? What's the biggest barrier to providing accommodations in your classroom? I asked my son this question last night and he said it was probably him. So, whatever you think it is. And that is it. Thank you all for being here. Give me your paper as you leave.